So take my life, take my mind, take my soul, take my will.
Hello everyone, welcome to the K and Chats podcast. My name is Eric Mojica, your host for the show. Today we got episode number 7 with Paul Howey. He is the strength and conditioning coach with the Atlanta Braves, currently at the AAA level. Began with an internship with the Washington Nationals, and then went on to the Seattle Mariners to work there as a strength coach, and is now currently with the Atlanta Braves. Paul has his master's in Kinesiology and Exercise Science, and he also attended Cortiva Institute in Scottsdale, Arizona, where he got his massage therapy license. So in this episode, we're going to talk about strength and conditioning for professional baseball players, everything programming and communication within the entire organization. Paul really talks about how much he values how well the Atlanta Braves communicate from the front office all the way down from A-ball all the way to the major leagues. The whole team of trainers involves the strength and conditioning coach, the athletic trainers, the physical therapists, the team doctors, orthopedics, and the front office and the entire coaching staff. And so they really value how well they communicate to serve their players as best as they can, to not only provide the best resources for them to improve their performance, but also to be healthy in order to stay on the field. So he also goes into some of the challenges that comes into being a strength coach at the minor league level, talking about traveling schedules and how sometimes they are on the road and they don't have access to a very good weight room or any type of equipment for weightlifting. And so he goes into that and talks about some of the things he enjoys with those challenges. He's also going to talk about some of his philosophies with training, specifically his philosophy, not so much the Atlanta Braves philosophy, but talks about how much he values functional training and how he really relies on the orthopedic exams that the medical staff provides for the strength coaches to know how to program and have the modalities to help the athletes improve their performance through a strength and conditioning program. And so a lot of good stuff from that. And if you're a baseball player, if you are a baseball coach, strength and conditioning coach, anyone who gets to work or plays baseball and is looking to get to the upper levels, there's a lot of good information that Paul provides for us. So make sure that you have a pen and paper and write some of the stuff he talks about down, because it's just really good information that will help you really develop your players if you're a coach. Want to make sure I give a shout out to Dr. Casey Berry at All Star Chiropractic for hooking me up with Paul Howey for this podcast episode. If you're in the South Kansas City area and need a chiropractor, Dr. Berry is a very knowledgeable guy. He really understands anatomy and physiology, and he's one of the few chiropractors that I've gotten to know that can really talk about training and how to provide exercises along with the chiropractic adjustments to help with posture and chronic pain and any other things that chiropractors can really help you with. So if you're in South Kansas City, make sure to check out All Star Chiropractic. And last but not least, make sure to give us a follow at our website at kandchatspodcast.wordpress.com. You can also find our content on Instagram and Facebook, and you can also follow some of the stuff that I like to share on Twitter. That is at The Real E Mojica. I love showing baseball content and training and other just any other articles that people out there in the baseball and training community love to share. So make sure to give us a follow with that. And last but not least, if you're a fan of the podcast, please make sure that you're sharing it with your friends and family. You know, let your teammates know, let coaches, any other trainers that you get to work with that are interested in learning more. And the goal of this podcast is ultimately to share free information and to connect people with all of our guests on the show. So please make sure to give us a follow and make sure that you share that. And so with that said, here's the interview with Paul Howey. Episode 7 of K and Chats begins right now. All right, folks, we got a special guest today. He is the AAA strength and conditioning coach of the Atlanta Braves. His name is Paul Howey, and welcome to the show, Paul.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for your time, man. So just kind of same introduction I have with all my guests. Tell us about you, your story, where you're from, and where you're at right now.
Yeah, well, kind of long story short, I played baseball through high school and then in college went to a couple different schools, ended up at Abilene Christian University in Abilene, Texas. Played baseball there, and then coached there, and coached at another university there in Abilene after I was done playing. And then got out of baseball. I was pretty burnt out, kind of ready to get out. My thought at the time, finishing school, was I was going to coach either at the high school or college level, but I was just ready to get out for a bit. So got out. My wife and I got married kind of in that time frame, and worked at several different places. Worked at a drug treatment center for adolescent guys. Did some other things here and there. Worked for a nonprofit worship ministry for a little bit. And then just happened to get back into coaching, and thought to myself, man, I need to just kind of check in some of the connections I had in baseball, and started reaching out to some people. Was real fortunate to do a internship with the Washington Nationals the summer of 2014, and then just started throwing out resumes, and was real fortunate to get hired on by the Seattle Mariners to be their low-A strength coach in 2015. So kind of a different journey for me. I'm kind of getting into this a little bit later in life, but baseball's always kind of been an avenue that has gotten me places. And, strength and conditioning and exercise science has always kind of been a passion of mine. And so just molding the two together has been great.
Right on. So let's get straight into strength and conditioning. So what are the basic needs for baseball players? What type of training do you typically work with? And what is the process like working with the entire staff in the organization? So talking about working with the doctors, with the physical therapists, massage therapists, everything.
Yeah.
What's the whole team environment like there with strength and conditioning?
That's a great question. So, I think every organization over the past while has kind of come to this place of the more we can integrate and the more we can communicate, the better we're going to be. And, when you step back, I really think that you've got people in baseball that really see and understand, okay, what's best for the athlete? Like, how can we come about this in a team approach? And so really that's kind of how we approach it. You have your athletic trainers who are obviously going to be dealing with injuries. They're going to be dealing with more soft tissue things. They're going to be dealing with more of your orthopedic assessments and things like that at the beginning of the season. And then you have your strength and conditioning staff who are going to be more of your performance testing and, writing the strength and conditioning programs, bridging the gap if you have guys that are injured, return to play types of things. So really, all in all, it's just a big communication between all departments. And I think that's one thing that I've been very fortunate being with Seattle and being with Atlanta that, we've always kind of taken that approach, and it's worked really well.
What are the basic needs for baseball players with strength and conditioning? And what is the process like working with the entire training staff? So talking about doctors, physical therapists, any other massage therapists, anything like that. So what's that process like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, just to kind of start with the first part, basic needs of a baseball player, kind of from what I look at, is you definitely, scapular stability, external rotation strength, hip stability, hip mobility, lower body strength, lower body power, the ability to, generate force in all three planes of motion, and be able to move well. Those are just the basic needs of a baseball athlete, obviously. So kind of thinking from that place of training in all three planes, that's kind of the basis of where my philosophy for strength and conditioning for a baseball athlete comes from. And then from there, looking at specific things, specific needs that a guy has, which can kind of lead you into, what is the athletic training staff seeing with a guy with some of the orthopedic assessments, or what are we seeing with a guy with some of our performance assessments? And so, it's a collaboration between groups. And I think that's one thing that, over the years, as strength and conditioning has evolved, I think the medical teams and medical staff has really come to value that piece of it. And there's a lot of communication in organizations that do it really well. There's a lot of good communication. And I think that's one thing I've been really fortunate in with both Seattle and Atlanta is there's, been really good communication on both ends there. And so it's kind of a team approach to, what a guy needs.
And so when it comes to player development, obviously you're working with minor leaguers. So what is that process like just to begin? So I'm assuming that you probably get some kind of report from the front office or somebody from player development, right? And they're letting you know, okay, we need him to get stronger. We need him to get faster. Like, what is that like in the Atlanta Braves organization?
Yeah, it's interesting because you have that dynamic of like, okay, we want this guy to be at the top of his game every day, but at the same time, he's playing 140 games on the minor league side in 155 days, basically. So it's that balance between, performance in getting your lifts in the gym and making sure that everything you do in the gym complements a guy on the field. So, if you have a pitcher on a 5-day rotation, you want to be sure that, day one, he gets day one of his, after his start, he gets good lower body lift in, he gets some good aerobic capacity work in, just to kind of start that cycle of recovery going. Day of his side, he's probably going to do some sort of an upper body lift after he throws his side. And then from there, then you just look at, days 2, 3, and 4 up to his next start. What's this guy need to get ready to start the next time? So kind of it's nice because that's where, it really comes up to us to, what do we feel like this guy needs on a daily basis? And it's dependent on the player. Some guys, in season, they still want to get after it and they want to work hard in the gym, and that's great. And some guys, that's just not necessarily what they need, just maintaining a base level of strength, but helping them with maybe 1 or 2 needs here that's going to help them play better every night. That's the goal for me. I think everybody's got a little bit different philosophy for in season, but that's my goal. Number 1 is injury prevention. Number 2 is improving performance and helping with performance enhancement. And then number 3 is just helping guys get ready to play every day. That's in season. Off season, then obviously you can get after it. Guys are there to lift. They're there to get stronger. You're kind of building that engine more in the off season, where in season it's kind of more of maintaining in a sense.
And I think that's something that most, I don't want to say young, maybe inexperienced strength and conditioning coaches, because I remember myself starting up in college, the only thing about is performance, right? And
yeah.
So, what kind of got you, was it maybe like your upcoming who you studied with in school, or how did you get better at understanding that whole balance between improving performance and also keeping them on the field?
Yeah. So I really try to keep my ears open a lot. I just try to communicate really well with the players I have. I ask a lot of questions, especially my first 2 years. I asked a ton of questions. I had a great coordinator. He would, give me a lot of good insight. I'd watch other strength coaches, watch to see what they were doing, watch just how guys' bodies responded to things, and of course communicated with the athletic trainer and different things. So it's just kind of a little bit of something that you pick up over time of just being able to get that feel of what you think a guy needs, and then communicating with the athlete of, hey, how you feeling today? How's your body feel? Maybe this is a day where we can push through it a little bit and, we can get a little bit of a better lift in, or maybe this is a day where you just need some mobility work and some soft tissue work. And I think after my second year, I really started seeing the value of soft tissue work. And so actually I wanted to go back to school and get my massage therapy license, and was very fortunate enough to do that. And that in and of itself has probably been the best continuing education or best adding on to my skill set that I could ever want. And so that gives me an opportunity to do some hands-on stuff with guys, and I've seen just great things with that. Not only just building a relationship and rapport with the athlete, but truly helping the athlete get ready to play that day, or relax if they need to relax, or just whatever the needs are. So that's kind of the approach that I've taken with it.
And something that kind of comes to mind, because I started researching, like when you're 14 years old, you're not really researching, right? You're just reading stuff. But Eric Cressy was a big influence.
So you're learning. Yeah.
And, I think about some of the stuff that I read from him and talking about
understanding the age of the athlete. And so have you experienced any challenges or seen any differences between maybe a high school kid who's in the organization or somebody who came in from college or somebody who might even be a Dominican Republic player who signed when he was 15?
Yeah.
What's that dynamic like as far as, getting to know the player and teaching them the proper ways to train?
Yeah. That's a great point, and you're exactly right, because so much of the time you have a huge dynamic of guys. Like you could have a 18-year-old Latin American player who is very talented, very athletic, but doesn't have a lot of training history in the gym. The same with a high school athlete. You could have a high school athlete who did have a good strength and conditioning coach, whether it's from his high school or maybe he didn't have a good strength and conditioning program, to your college guy, your SEC college guy that has been getting after it every off season for the last 2 or 3 years. So you have. So really, I think that's where it's kind of multifaceted. One is, I think that's where your strength and conditioning program really has to do a good job of assessing guys, understanding where guys are coming from, understanding their training history, understanding the goals that you have, that the organization has for that particular athlete, and creating his program on top of that, and seeing it as a progression. Just like you're a freshman in college, and then you're a sophomore, then you're a junior, then you're a senior. It's kind of very much the same thing. It's that same progression. And it's just that, these athletes are playing low A, high A, double A, triple A, and then hopefully up in the big leagues. But yeah, you definitely have to take that into consideration. And I think that's where having a really good strength and conditioning program, especially at the lower levels, and especially at your rookie ball and your extended spring training level, when you're able to teach guys good fundamental movement and how to take care of their body, and you get guys that buy into that, then it just makes all the difference in the world when you start to get those guys in the first full season or in AA or in AAA. And you can really see the progression. You can tell when guys have had good strength and conditioning coaches or where they're really excited about being in the gym. So yeah, it's a big part of it for sure.
Right on. And so that leads us to the next question, talking about assessments.
Mm-hmm.
So first off, let me just start out asking, what is the process like in the organization? So I think you mentioned that the orthopedics is the one that does those assessments. So how does that kind of start off, and how does that kind of trickle down to the strength and conditioning?
Yeah, so that's where just, the communication comes in big. Every organization is going to have probably very similar assessments. Side, on our side, right now, that's kind of a big, I don't want to say, what would be the right way to say it? It differs from organization to organization, definitely. I mean, you can get online right now and you can look at anything from, the K-Vest and what TPI is doing with the K-Vest. And you can look at force plate stuff. You can look at FMS screenings. You can look at postural analysis, overhead squat assessment, single leg squat assessment. I mean, the gamut of assessment is just huge. And so I think right now in baseball, what's happening is you've got a lot of people who are stepping back and saying, okay, what are the best assessments that we can do for our players that gives us the best information? And so some organizations do a ton of assessing. Some organizations don't do a lot of assessing. And then you kind of have those organizations that are obviously there in the middle too. So it just depends on the organization and what they deem to be valuable. But I love having good assessments on our guys, because then as a strength coach, when you're going to program for that player, it gives you great data to be able to say to the guy, hey man, through our assessments, we found that you really need some hamstring strength. So let's work on that in your program today. Or man, your hip internal rotation is really poor. So let's work on hip internal rotation and make that part of your program, or lower body power, lower body strength. When you can go to the athlete with that kind of information, you get better buy-in, and the athlete's like, okay, that's great. Help me with that for the most part.
Awesome. And this isn't just a question asking about the Atlanta Braves, but in baseball overall. How much, from your perspective, do you think that organizations are prioritizing those any type of assessments, biomechanical analysis, because you hear about certain teams that really go into it, right? Like I think about the Tampa Bay Rays. They're very on data collection and using overall, where do you think baseball is at right now as far as all of that?
That's a good question, because I think, baseball's become so data-driven as it is anyway. Analytics are so big in the game right now. And I think you've got a, school of thought where, baseball's been played for 100 years. And, a lot of that information, maybe necessarily wasn't there or wasn't used. But now I think people are tapping into that, obviously. And they're tapping into it on the performance side too. So, like I say, there's tons of things out there that you can use, that you can go to for assessment. I think that it's kind of got to be a little bit of a happy medium. We've got to understand, I think, as strength coaches, that our athletes aren't science projects. They're athletes. They're guys that just want to play baseball and they want to get to the highest level. So if we can come in with assessments and with things that we can show players like, hey, there's value in this, and we get buy-in, then from that, we get better buy-in from the players, and then we're able to do more with the guys. But again, I think it's a happy medium. I think sometimes, I'll talk to guys that are doing certain things, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's cool. Like, man, if you get buy-in in that, that's great. And then I talk to other guys, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that's what I would want to do. But again, philosophies differ, and it's like anything else. Everybody's looking for the edge. Everybody's looking for that, silver bullet. In my opinion, I don't think that silver bullet's necessarily out there, other than just having some good basic, levels of understanding, assessment, what you want to do, what the athlete needs to do on a daily basis, and then helping that athlete get there through good training and good movement. So.
Right on. And what about, I was curious about this. When it comes to off-season training for your athletes, I'm assuming that not all of them train with you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how's that dynamic between, when they hire their own personal trainer, or if they go to Driveline or with Top Velocity, like bigger baseball training, off-season programs that they can go to. What's that like as far as balancing, what your philosophy is, your programming, then if they go on to do something different?
Yeah. I mean, it's a give and take, really, because you have to understand that you can't be with the athlete. You've got 25 athletes, 25 to 35 guys that you've worked with over the course of the season. On a whole minor league system, you probably have 125 guys. So you've got to understand as a coach that, you're not going to be able to train all those guys remotely, at the end of the season through the off season. And so a big thing, again, is just comes back to communication, trying to help the guys find the best resources that they can. If a guy loves to go to Driveline, or if a guy loves to go to Cressy, or if a guy loves to go to Mike Boyle, or if a guy likes to go to his personal trainer that's down the street, it's like, hey, cool, man. Like, I understand that, but communicate with me with what you're doing. Like, let me know what you're doing with those guys. Can I see your program, or can you give me some information on who you're working with, so I can have a conversation with this guy or girl if it's a female trainer. But then that way we can have better communication and understanding of what the player is doing. Now, we provide players with a program every off season, and it's funny because more times than not, guys will come back and they'll be like, yeah, I did some of the Brave stuff, or I did some of this stuff, and then I also worked with my personal trainer some, or yeah, what you guys had written up for me was really the same thing that my personal trainer had written up for me, or very similar to what we did at Cressy or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I mean, in a sense, a lot of us are doing the same thing in a sense. So for me personally, I don't get offended when a guy wants to go and do something. If I was in his shoes, I'd probably want to have somebody right there with me, or I want to be training with a group of 5 to 10 other guys and getting after it. And that's great. But then also too, you have those guys that don't have those resources. And so, we're able to provide very high quality and very good strength conditioning programs for those guys in the off season. And, you just try to communicate the best you can with guys.
Awesome. And when it comes to programming, I kind of want to ask you a question to provide some information for maybe just like our youth coaches or maybe high school level.
Yeah.
Probably don't have a strength and conditioning coach. What do you suggest as far as, getting into the off season and then preseason, end season, getting into the macro cycle of training? What do you recommend the average coach to get a better understanding of?
Yeah. Do you mean in like resources, or do you mean in just like some basics of training?
Just basics of training.
Yeah. So basics of training, if you're talking about a high school athlete, I think one of the biggest things a high school athlete can do is just learn good movement quality. If a high school athlete, from my background and working with high school athletes have never been taught how to squat. Lateral movements. There's not a lot of single leg movements. It's very sagittal plane. It's not a lot of frontal plane or transverse plane movements. So my biggest encouragement that I would give to high school coaches is teach your kids how to squat, teach your kids how to hip hinge and pull from the ground, and teach them how to have good movement qualities from those two movements, and then just build from there. Build your program in all three planes of motion. Get your kids strong in the sagittal plane, get your kids strong in the frontal plane, and then allow them to, from there, create explosiveness in the transverse plane. And I think from there, if you can set that and establish that, I think you're going to really help that athlete down the road. And I think another thing too for younger coaches is you've got to be able to step back and see this athlete 4 or 5 years down the road. He may be a freshman in high school now, but you've got to understand at some point this kid's going to be a junior or senior. At some point he is going to be your number one guy, and maybe he's going to have some opportunities to go on and to play college baseball or to possibly play professional baseball. So at that point you've got to look at him and you've got to say, okay, do I really need to load this kid right now at 14 in a bad squat pattern or in a bad hip hinge when he can't do the movement? It's like, in my opinion, no. Teach good movement quality, and then as the kid ages and as he gets older, then you can add weight as he progresses, and that's going to help him so much more than just trying to be that guy that's like, oh man, like you see videos all the time on Facebook and on social media. Hey man, I just started working with this guy and he just PR'd, and he's 15 and he squatted 315. Well, cool man, but it was a poor squat, and that shear force on the low back right now is just, he doesn't feel it now, but when he's 22 and he's trying to play pro baseball, if he makes it that far, then it may not be good. So yeah, sorry to get on a soapbox there, but I kind of get, I get a little fired up about that in a good way.
Same here.
In a good way. So yeah,
I love getting into just huge for baseball.
Yeah.
I still like to follow people that, not to be cocky or anything, but in my mind, I think that's the wrong way. It's a way to learn through that. So,
can always learn from everybody.
Yeah. And so basically, to sum up everything that you said, it's basically functional strength, right? And so,
exactly.
In your opinion, what is the appropriate place for a high school athlete to get into biometrics and med ball training? Because obviously we want to have a good foundational movement and then work to be able to produce that power. So what's your take on that? Do you think it's really good to at least introduce some of that to help force those movement patterns, or can you kind of go into that?
Definitely. Oh, for sure. Especially with an athlete that has a lower training age, just teaching them the proper mechanics in how to jump or how to land correctly, or bilateral single leg stuff, how to rotate with a medicine ball, and again, being able to regress it in a way that the athlete their body can receive it. So it's like, okay, well, maybe this athlete doesn't need to be able to do multiple bounds right now through a set of hurdles. But maybe what we do is we're just teaching him the proper mechanics of loading, jumping, and landing. Okay, maybe that's all he needs right now for this, for this cycle or this block of his training, and then we can progress from there. Then we can progress from there to, doing a multiple jump, or then we can progress from there to doing a single leg hop. And then again, the same with, lateral drives. And the same with med ball work. If I'm wanting to throw a medicine ball, I'm not going to give a kid 20-pound medicine ball. Give him a 2 or 4 pound medicine ball. Make sure that he's doing the movement correctly. And as he gets older and he gets more efficient with the movement, then add weight as needed, depending on what your adaptation that you're wanting with the athlete.
Right on. All right. Well, all right, Paul, we're going to take a quick break. Get
Okay.
a sponsor, and we'll be right back.
Sounds good.
This episode of K and Chats is brought to you by All Star Chiropractic. Dr. Casey Berry is a chiropractor located in South Kansas City, providing adjustments with a holistic approach to promote self-healing through the power of chiropractic. The power that made the body heals the body. For more information, visit www.allstarchiropractickKC.com or call the office at 816-942-6066. That's 816-942-6066. All Star Chiropractic.
All right, we're back. So, Paul, I got to ask you, so let's talk about specifically in the weight room, what's going on as far as strength and conditioning, what kind of lifts, because you kind of went into about, planes of motion and whatnot, but you guys do Olympic lifting? Are you guys doing corrective exercise? Like what, can you kind of go into details a little bit?
Yeah.
Position specific and all that?
Yeah. So kind of the philosophy I've taken on things is, if a guy has a background of Olympic lifting and that's something that he wants to do, I definitely want to see that movement, him perform that movement before I would ever program it for him specifically. Honestly, I don't program a lot of Olympic lifts in season. I think that we can get, some of the lower body power output and the force production through the ground with doing some variations, possibly of some Olympic lifts. But off season, if a guy wants to do some of that, then that's great. Basically, what I do is I kind of look at the guy, again, going back to the needs of what we think his needs are and programming from that. Maybe a guy's really good bilaterally, but he really needs to be in a single leg, split stance position, and he's not that great there. Well, then let's progress him from a, split squat up to a, rear foot elevated split squat. Guys come in twice a week to lift. So usually what I do is for their lower body strength on one day, it'll be a bilateral movement. And then their lower body strength on the next day will be a unilateral movement or a split stance, split squat or something of that regard. I'll usually front squat or safety squat guys. If a guy can back squat, has good ankle mobility and good hip mobility, and he back squats okay with still being able to stay fairly neutral in his spine, then I have no problem with him doing that. But I like to stick with, for lower body strength movements, I like to stick with trap bar deadlift, front squat, safety bar squat, or split squat, or rear foot elevated split squat. And then upper body movements, depending on the guy, depending on what his shoulder needs are and what he's got going on with the shoulder, horizontal pressing wise, some sort of an alternating dumbbell bench or a, bilateral bench. And then of course, just, lots of horizontal pulling, some vertical pulling. I like to do more cable vertical pulling than I do pull-ups in season. Off season, I'm fine with guys doing pull-ups and the like. And then, rotational core exercises and anti-rotational core exercises, excuse me. So, a lot of planks, a lot of rotate resist holds, Pallof press holds, a little bit of rotational stuff, if we feel like the guy needs it. But, basically, if a guy from his, FMS score or whatever, we always have their correctives at the beginning. They do their correctives, or they do their PRI or whatever their, their corrective exercises are. And then from there, we, program their strength movements and we go into their workout. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Adding some flies and stuff like that in there at the beginning too. So
do you guys write specific programs for every single player on the roster?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes we do, and that's dependent on the organization. But I like to have a program for each guy. I like to be able to step back, look at his needs that we got from all their needs assessment, and then, write a specific program for each guy, communicating with the athlete too, and saying, hey, what do you like to do? What things do you gravitate towards? Getting that information from him, and then also saying like, hey, this is a need I see. Like, I'd rather you do this movement than that. What's your thoughts on that? And yeah, but I like to have an individual program for each guy, because it makes it more specific to that guy. That doesn't always mean that maybe that's always going to work, because you've got road gyms and you've got your different situations for your lifts. Your lifts aren't always in a great spot where you have all your equipment, but for the most part, yeah, I like to have something in place for each guy. So.
And when it comes to being in the minor leagues, facilities, what's that like? Do most stadiums or have
So if you're at home, I've been really fortunate. The affiliates that I've worked at, we've always had a gym there at the affiliate. So, we can bring guys in, they can work out, any time up to batting practice or pitcher stretch. And then, a lot of guys will come in and lift, post batting practice or post game. Some guys will come in and lift. On the road, it can get, you can be at anything from an Anytime Fitness, which have been some great Anytime Fitnesses that I've been to that have a lot of great stuff, to, just a YMCA, and to anything from that to, a performance center that, wherever it is that you can find a lift. To sometimes, I've lifted guys in the hotel gym, just because, it's getting late in the season. I just want to get the guys moving a little bit, and I don't want to take the guys 20 minutes away to where the gym is. So hey, just come down. Let's go. Give me 15, 20 minutes and get you in, get you out, and go get some lunch. So yeah. It's dependent on many different things, for sure. So
yeah, definitely. Because I remember being in college, because I played at NAIA school.
Yeah,
I lived down here in Kansas City, and so we always stayed at really nice hotels. We're really fortunate about that. But most hotels don't have a weight room, and if they did, there's 2 or 3 treadmills, a bike, and then if we got lucky, there were some dumbbells in there.
Dumbbells up to 50.
And I was like, because we didn't always have an athletic trainer that traveled with us, and so I took the athletic trainer. And man, every time we went on the road, I would take a PVC pipe, foam roller, lacrosse ball, bands, all that. And so
exactly
how that is, because I know in the minor league, it's still a grind, right? I mean, the resources are there, but they're going to be limited. And I assume at the major league level, everything is perfect. So
yeah, I think that just exactly what you said. I've always got a bag that's got a TRX in it. I've got some extra foam rollers, some lacrosse balls. I usually take a 35, 45-pound kettlebell and run that with me wherever we go. And, you can do a ton of stuff for a field lift with a guy. And, there's many days where you get in late. I mean, you get in at, 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, you're not going to get anybody up to go lift at the gym. If you've got a pitcher, you always have 2 pitchers usually that need to lift. So you can get those guys at the field with your kettlebell and your TRX and whatever bands you've got, and that's your lift for the day. So yeah, it's super. That's another fun part about it too. Is just the creativeness of kind of how you've got to be, which always keeps you on your toes for sure. So
definitely, that sounds like the fun part.
yeah, it is. It is.
All right. So any technology that you guys get into, how do you guys collect data? Do you guys use Excel spreadsheets? Do you guys have a software like that? You can share?
Yeah. No, that's a great question, because I mean, kind of like we mentioned earlier, everything has become so data driven, which is great in a lot of respects. That it's really just dependent on the organization on that. But yeah, we'll collect. Body weight obviously is still a big thing that we collect almost on a daily basis. Body fat percentages sometimes. Right now, I don't know if you're familiar with fatigue science or Whoop bands, but they're basically sleep data information, and so that's another data collecting thing that I've seen organizations use. And then again, too, redoing your FMS testing or redoing your whatever assessments that you can do there at your affiliate. You collect all that data, you keep all that data. You kind of get into some interesting situations because obviously as guys get to a higher level, they're on the 40-man roster, they're in the big leagues, there's agreements with the Players Association that, guys, that data can't be used against them. So you might have a situation where a guy doesn't want to, participate in something like that if he's on the 40-man roster, which, that's fine. You just kind of have to say, okay, that's cool. And I get it. That guy doesn't want that information possibly used against him later down the road, which, hopefully would never happen as it is anyway. But yeah, we try to keep all of the data that we collect, and then that helps us track our guys, in a better way. And, if we can tell, like, hey, this guy was he was a 1 on the FMS, shoulder mobility, and, now he's a 2 in the middle of the season, which, okay, maybe we're kind of wondering, like, why is he a 2 now? Not that we wanted him to be a 1, but hopefully that's a good adaptation that's maybe happening, which probably wouldn't happen and probably would actually go the other way. Just stuff like that. We try to keep all that information for our guys. So for us.
Right on. And what's that like? Because you said you were at AA last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
If you do know, what's that like when a player gets called up and then maybe they get sent back down and you got to continue working with them, like communication and stuff. But what's that? First of all, what's that feel like when you get to work with a guy and he gets called up?
Man, it's awesome because really, I mean, if you're going to be in this profession, you've got to understand that you're not there for yourself. If you're there for self-promotion and if you're there to make a name for yourself, I mean, I think a person's really got to step back and say to themselves, like, hey, am I doing this for the right reasons? But when you're there to help an athlete and just to help an athlete get better, do what he does, help him reach his goals, it's awesome to get to celebrate with that guy. And I was really fortunate this year. This is my first year to work at an upper level. Usually they consider AA, AAA as being in the upper levels of the minor leagues, obviously. And I think I had like 6 guys make their MLB debut this year that I had at some point, which is fantastic. And then I want to say I had like 8 to 10 guys at some point, including those guys, but another 4 or 5 guys, get some big league time, at some point as well. So, I mean, it's great because, that's the ultimate goal for these guys is to help them reach their goal. And, when you get to be a little piece or a little part of that, then, it's real fulfilling, real fulfilling. So, yeah.
Awesome. And if they get called up, they get sent back down, like, what is that like from the strength and conditioning?
Yeah, so again, it kind of comes back to, having a little bit of feel, understanding that, this guy's probably not that fired up that he's back in AA after being, sent to AAA for a little bit. So just, trying to communicate with the guy, see, obviously, we'll be communicating with the AAA strength coach of, hey, what did you do with him in AAA? Kind of how did he respond to those types of things? And, the biggest thing is just that I tell these guys a lot is just stay in your routine. Baseball players, pitchers especially, are very routine oriented. So, you do the best you can to encourage them to stay in that routine. Because you might have a guy that just goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Or, there's a lot of excitement when he gets up there, and then when he comes down, it's, kind of a little bit of a blow. So it's just, hey, stay in your routine, keep working. And that's the approach that, that I usually take with it, and just try to listen to the guy and see what he feels like he needs to at the time. So. Awesome.
And so just a really kind of a vague question, but what's the best part of being a strength and conditioning coach?
Man, I'd say the best part is truly just getting to work with guys that that have an opportunity to do something really special, in their career. Getting to see those guys do their thing, do their craft, and then the relationships that you build with guys. There's guys that I had my first year that aren't in professional baseball anymore, but I'll still stay in touch with them, or shoot them a text here and there, and they're either dads or husbands, or they're moved on to other jobs and doing other things, and so just that progression of life, that at some point every one of us, whether it was the last year of high school, the last year of college, or sometime in professional baseball, you had to say goodbye to the game. So you move on, and I really enjoyed getting to see, guys progress in life and do some things, whether it's in baseball or not. So I would say that also paired with the off season. The off seasons are nice. You get to enjoy some time with your family, and you work really hard during the season. So it's just time to take a break and take a breath. So
awesome. Any big inspirations that you've had with any other strength and conditioning coaches, any other sports coaches, family? Like, what are your biggest influences?
Man, I've noticed as I've gotten older, kind of just learning myself and how I operate. I learn a lot just from watching people go about their business, kind of do their thing. So, one of the two people that have really influenced me a lot was the Washington Nationals strength conditioning coordinator that I did my first internship with. He and I actually grew up together. His name was Landon Brandis, or is Landon Brandis, and he's not in baseball anymore, but was in baseball for a really long time. And he was a very smart guy, but he was like, man, just keep it simple. Like, that's so much of this, you just got to keep it simple with guys. And I learned a lot just from getting to be around him the time that I did. And then my coordinator in Seattle, Rob Fumagalli, awesome guy, awesome strength coach, just great, great thinker, but at the same time, like, really good at taking what guys do on the field and, okay, how can we mimic that in the gym? How can we make it specific? And then my coordinator now, Mike Schofield, he's been awesome. I've learned a ton from him. And our big league strength coaches, Brad Scott and Jordan Wolf. All three of those guys are LMTs as well. And so just getting to have that communication with those guys, ask them about different things along that regard. And then, they're probably, they're some of the smartest strength coaches I've ever been around. And so just gleaning from those guys, it's just a huge blessing for me. So, it's kind of one of those things where you just, like I say, I try to learn from everybody that I come in contact with, but I've been very fortunate to be around some really good strength coaches. They're not only good strength coaches, but the good people. And, they care a lot about the players I work with. So gleaned a lot from those guys. And then obviously, online guys like Eric Cressy and Mike Boyle and, people like that. But, but you don't have obviously the day-to-day interaction with those guys as much as you do, other people you get to work with. So, yeah.
Right on. Any cool stories as a strength coach? Any anything that's appropriate for our audience?
It's appropriate for a podcast. Oh man, it was funny. I was talking to a high school teacher. Asked me to come in and just share a little bit with one of her classes, and I did. And got the same question, and I laughed and I was like, "Bro," I was like, "I don't know if there's any appropriate stories I can tell." Oh, let's see. Oh man. Man, off the top of my head, I don't.
I'm assuming it's just like shenanigans going on, right?
Oh, all the time. All the time. Yeah. I mean, I think it was my first year. One of our third baseman, great guy. He and I would always just be razzing each other back and forth about something. And so he had played some sort of a prank on me, and I'm sitting there in the dugout, and it's like a real cold. It was like April, it's cold, we're in Wisconsin, playing, and it's freezing. And so I go back up to the clubhouse and I'm like, what should I do? I need to do something to this guy. So, I mean, I grabbed his shower shoes and I just taped them as like much as I could, like onto a part of his locker. And, he comes in, where's my shower shoes? He's all pissed off, can't find his shower shoes. And, finally he looks up and, I'm kind of standing there peeking around to see, and he looks over at me and he just starts laughing. And so, I mean, just fun stuff, just goofing around. And, the clubhouse is a fun atmosphere. It's fun to see guys, that play in such a intense environment at times. It's fun to see those guys just be able to kind of let down and goof off and just be themselves,
That's baseball players.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, fun times. But.
All right, Paul, with just some closing thoughts, man. Any advice that you want to give out to young players, to young coaches, anything with strength and conditioning, baseball specific, like just
yeah. Say just from a strength and conditioning perspective is try to build as the best relationships that you can with the people around you, because you never really know when those relationships are going to come back to help you later on down the road. Even player to player, I look at some of the guys I played college baseball with or I played with growing up, and you don't realize that they're going to be doing what they're doing later in life. So one is, I think, just being a good person, building good relationships with people around you. And the other thing too is just trying to become as versatile as possible. I love being a strength coach. It's great. And I also love being able to do hands-on stuff with guys and being a massage therapist and, being able to do both of those things and combine both, because I think the more that you can be versatile, the more that value you're going to bring into a situation, and the more value you're going to add to yourself. And, people are going to see that. And so, whether it's with, biomechanics and exercise science and just understanding the body and anatomy and, movement, to, being able to be a dual ATC CSCS or, PT CSCS, I think the more versatile you can get as a coach, the better right now, especially just with where our industry is going. So for coaches, I'd say that. For athletes, I'd say just understand where you're at, understand what the needs are of your sport, and try to do some research, try to find good coaching that's around you, and enjoy playing. I think that's one thing that, before I got into baseball, I was teaching PE and to elementary, kind of middle school kids, some high school kids. And there was nothing more fun than walking into the gym, playing games, and just hearing kids scream because they're having so much fun, just playing a game. And I think that element of play and that element of just being able to be a kid and enjoy what you're doing, it's easily lost in just this mindset of showcases and this mindset of college scholarships and this mindset of, being a professional athlete. So bringing back that element of play and fun, for an athlete, I think is huge. Because I think when we're in a relaxed state, we play better, so that'd be my word of wisdom, I guess, if you will. So, yeah.
And where can people follow you? Anything on social media? Any other links, books, anything that you want?
Yeah. So I haven't. I'm not real big on social media. I know I should be, and I've thought numerous times I need to be. But you can correspond me through email. I am on Facebook. I don't post a lot of. I just mainly use Facebook for just personal things, but not strength and conditioning or exercise science related. But my email, phowey99@gmail.com. Reach out to me anytime. I definitely love to give back, stuff like this, or just, being able to have conversations with people in the industry, just to hear what other people are doing, or just to be a sounding board, whatever. Definitely anytime anybody wants to reach out, that's great. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm not on Instagram or Twitter or anything like that. So
Not a bad thing.
yeah. So.
All right, Paul. Well, thank you so much, man.
Man.
Awesome that we could talk to you, and I'll plan on staying in touch with you.
Okay. Thanks, Eric. Good luck to you, man.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
And there's our interview with Paul Howey. If you would like to contact Paul with any strength conditioning or training for baseball players, you can email him at phowey99@gmail.com. One of the best things that I got out of this interview with Paul was how much he values communication within the organization. Working with multiple staff members involves a communication system between the front office, coaches, team doctors, therapists, and most of all, serving to their professional athletes. Something that's been growing in popularity with baseball is assessing athletes and collecting valuable data to provide the best tools possible to keep their players on the field and improving their performance. From a strength and conditioning point of view, the most important part of the job is providing an environment where the athletes can use their resources and are in the best position possible to reach their ultimate goal of having a major league career. Training philosophies vary from one baseball organization to another, but the common theme seems to be improving performance through a system that goes beyond getting their athletes stronger and faster. Functional movement is the foundation of a strength and conditioning program because what matters most is that each individual player is in a position to perform at their greatest capacity. If you're a coach or trainer working with baseball players, the best starting point of any development program is to assess and analyze quality movement. Training age plays a huge role in how we should apply a training program. If we know an individual's limitations, then we know exactly what measurement of performance we need to track. As I hear many great coaches say, if you're not assessing, you're just guessing. I want to give a huge thank you to Paul Howey for being a guest on this show and providing us with some amazing insight of strength conditioning in professional baseball. Thank you for listening to the show, and follow us on our website at knchatspodcast.wordpress.com. Make sure to share this podcast with your friends, teammates, coaches, and anyone who enjoys learning from health and fitness professionals. The show is also available on YouTube, SoundCloud, and the Apple Podcasts app. We have more shows coming your way, so please stay tuned. This is Eric Mojica signing off. Until next time, this is KN Chats.